Today's movie review is going to be an interesting one. Patron Sean Walsh has requested The Adventures of Pluto Nash, an Eddie Murphy movie that came out in 2002. Apparently it's worth watching for the setting, if not the plot, and I guess we'll see for ourselves soon enough. The story about the story. Let me start with Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy is a New York City native who started his professional career with stand-up comedy in the 1970s. By the early 80s, he was a rising star in the genre, putting out albums of his routines and filming specials for theaters and videotapes. This was also around the time he joined the Saturday Night Live cast, which got him regular national exposure and a big group of comedian friends. In 1982, Murphy starred in a movie called 48 Hours, which became a hit. The next year, he came out with Trading Places and co-starred with Dan Aykroyd, another former SNL member. In 1984, Murphy was almost in Ghostbusters, but he was too busy at the time with Beverly Hills Cop, the first movie in which he would be the only star. Beverly Hills Cop became the best-grossing comedy and the best-grossing R-rated film up to that point, so while he was missed in Ghostbusters, he definitely made the right choice. By the late 80s, Murphy was such a star that he could make a stinker like The Golden Child and still get a big profit. However, in the 90s, his career would start to slow down. Murphy started to see more success in kids' movies and less success in adult comedies, and that trend would continue on through the aughts, which is when today's movie came out. Murphy continues to act today, but he's slowed down somewhat from his heyday. Anyway, I'm telling you the Eddie Murphy story because The Adventures of Pluto Nash was mostly just a vehicle for him. Apparently, the script was first written in the mid-80s, and after passing between one scriptwriter after another, someone finally decided to make a version where Eddie Murphy could play both the hero and the villain. It was kind of a thing for a while to cast Murphy in several roles at once. So they got him on board, they brought in a bunch of other comedians like Randy Quaid and Jay Moore, and they filmed it in the year 2000. And then the film just sat there for 2 years before someone decided they should at least make some money off of it, and released it in 2002. Everyone hated Pluto Nash. Critics hated it, and it made $7.1 million at the box office on a $100 million budget. The movie sucked so bad, it set records. It's apparently done better after a DVD release, but still not nearly enough to recoup the expenses. It actually sounds kind of impressive in its own way. So how about we start pulling this thing apart, starting with the story. The movie begins on the moon, 2080. Humans apparently colonized the satellite a long time ago, and now there are districts like Little America. The gravity under the protective dome is a full 1G. After a couple of shots to establish all of this, the movie focuses on a dive bar called Frankowski's. Tony Frankowski himself is dying on stage, but our protagonist Pluto Nash is sticking it out because he's friends with the guy. Afterwards, the two speak together in what I'm sure would have been rapid-fire repartee if either actor had cared about the dialogue. As it is, it's about as depressing as Frankowski's song. Anyway, a couple mobsters come in and start roughing up Tony while Pluto's in the bathroom, and when Pluto comes out, the older mobster starts getting friendly with him. Turns out Pluto recently got out of prison for smuggling, and he made a few contacts on the inside. Well, Tony borrowed $2.5 million from the mob to buy his club, and he hasn't paid any of it back, so to save his life and give himself a fresh start, Pluto offers to buy the club. So now it's 7 years later, 2087. Pluto has turned the place around and made it a dance club. On a random Tuesday night, he gets approached by Dina Lake, a singer from Earth who needs money to get back home, but whose moon card has expired. Dina's father was an old comrade of Pluto's, but Pluto doesn't need a singer, so he gives her a job waiting tables. After closing time, a couple slimy-looking guys walk into Pluto's club and offer to take it off his hands for $10 million. The younger visitor gets violent, and that's when Randy Quaid walks in. Apparently, he's an old but still dangerous robot called Bruno. things calm down after that, and the goons explain that they work for Rex Crater, who's been buying up businesses throughout the area so that he can open casinos once the government legalizes gambling in the area. Pluto refuses, and the two leave with a threat. Dina heads up to Pluto's office to give him a martini, and so she's there when the slimy guy gives Pluto one last chance before blowing up his club. The explosion hits the main floor, so Pluto, Dina, and Bruno are okay, but the club is a mess. When they exit the building, someone shoots at Pluto, and Pluto runs after him. But Dina uses Bruno to intercept a call about an ambush, and so they both hurry to intercept it. Pluto runs straight into a bar full of Rex Crater's goons, and a firefight ensues. Dina shows up just in time to state the obvious and to be a distraction, but then she grabs an automatic pistol and takes a whole bunch of goons down. Then Bruno shows up with a pair of hand cannons and demolishes the place. After they get away, Dina asks for enough money to get home since she did help with the fight, but Pluto tells her that the bar was full of biometric cameras, so now she's a marked woman who has to stay with him to survive. So Pluto rents a room at a hotel where he's friends with the manager, and leaves both Dina and Bruno behind so he can do some investigating. Pluto heads to a pool hall to speak to an old acquaintance of his, Roland. Roland is a retired cop, and while he doesn't know how to get to Rex Crater, he's heard a rumor that Rex is a clone. A cloning specialist came to the moon 8 years ago, but she got murdered. However, her assistant, Mona Zimmer, is still alive, and Roland helps Pluto get her address. Pluto brings Dina to Mona's body mod clinic to pose as a married couple who want a new look. So the movie spends some time playing around with awkward early 2000s CGI, and after that, Pluto bribes and then busts the doctor with a fake police badge. He gets her to talk about her old boss, but all she can tell him is that she worked with someone whose initials are WZW. When they get back to the hotel, Pluto finds his mother waiting for him. She's at least as tough as he is, and she insists that Pluto should go to Earth to get away from all of this. Crater's goons show up soon after, and there's an action scene as everyone escapes. Pluto then gets a couple of spacesuits from Roland and steals a flying car to get to Farside, another settlement. Oh, and the car has an automatic chauffeur, played by John Cleese of Monty Python fame. John Cleese is not funny at any point during his appearance. Pluto leaves the highway behind and drives to his safe house, an abandoned prospecting dome in the middle of nowhere. There, Dina points out that WZW could be MZM, and this lets Pluto find Michael Zoroaster Marucci, complete with a mugshot of Alec Baldwin. Pluto suspects Rex Crater is Marucci's clone, and Roland confirms that it's at least plausible. Roland goes to his contacts in the Force with his theory, but then he gets shot in the back. Pluto's mother calls him with the bad news, and soon after that, the goons show up at the safe house with no real answer given for how they found it. The goons blast the dome, but Pluto and Dina are prepared for the decompression and are hiding in the bathroom. There's a low-G action scene with some painfully obvious wire effects, and it eventually turns into a lunar car chase. Pluto gets away, but he crashes his car in the process. And while the goons check the crashed car, they give up before searching for, say, footprints. Footprints that never disappear in the windless vacuum of the lunar surface. Dina, Pluto, and Bruno start walking across the surface, but it's not long before the humans run out of oxygen. Bruno grabs them and keeps going, but then his battery runs dry. Luckily, that's exactly when a Puerto Rican in a space van happens by and rescues them. The rescuer, Felix, also turns out to be a smuggler and a big fan of Pluto Nash, so he takes him to Moon Beach, the moon's gambling destination. Rex Meteor owns one of its premier hotel casinos. Tony, from the movie's start, plays at this hotel, so Pluto and Dina get a room and a ticket to his show. Turns out, Tony's career took off after he changed his name to Tony Francis and became an Italian-style crooner. Unfortunately, Felix is at the same hotel, and Pluto never told him that he's infiltrating the place, and so Felix blows Pluto's cover. Still, Pluto does get to see Tony's early show, in which he proves that he does not really have the vocal timbre to be an Italian crooner. Pluto meets with Tony backstage, and he calls in his favor so that Tony will help Pluto reach Rex Media. Meanwhile, he has Dina and Bruno rent a getaway car. Unfortunately, Tony's plan is too crazy for Pluto, so they go back to the ground floor and get captured by security. They also capture Dina and Bruno. Pluto wakes up in Rex's penthouse, and he discovers that Rex Meteor isn't a clone of Marucci, he's a clone of Pluto Nash. Marucci was the original mastermind behind Moonsign Gambling, and he cloned Pluto while he was in prison because he needed someone who knew the moon's underworld. Clones can also get your memories, apparently. But Rex turned on Marucci and killed both him and the cloning specialist, leaving him in charge of the whole operation. Incidentally, being a clone is also how Rex knew that Pluto would be at the hotel and the safe house. Rex has been trying to kill Pluto since he got in his way, but now he's having fun, and so he drags Pluto's companions into the penthouse. He also brings in his incompetent goons and finally kills them for screwing up too much. He then shows off his plans for Club Pluto, and Pluto takes advantage of his distraction to wrestle him for his gun. And because both of them are wearing the exact same outfit for some reason, you know what happens next. Ultimately, Pluto bluffs Rex's guards by shooting Bruno, who can be repaired, and so they shoot Rex dead. Pluto then sends away the androids and knocks out the chief lieutenant, but it turns out that Rex is just as paranoid as Pluto, and he was wearing a bulletproof undershirt. Still, after just a little more wrestling, Pluto throws Rex through the penthouse window. Time passes, and Dina sings for Club Pluto's grand reopening. All his friends are there, and it's happy endings all around. The analysis. I remember reading, once upon a time, a question that Isaac Asimov asked, or rather a question that he believes every author should ask. If you could tell your story in a modern-day setting, then why make it science fiction? If you could cut out all the sci-fi set dressing, replace all the sci-fi characters with regular people, and still have the plot unfold the exact same way, then why are you bothering? Now, Asimov is not saying that stories like these are not welcome among true science fiction fans. What he's saying is that you're wasting your opportunity. And the Adventures of Pluto Nash has wasted its opportunity. Now, mind you, a wasted setting is not the only problem Pluto Nash has. The sets are big but cheap, the effects can't deliver what the script and action scenes ask for, funny actors are stuck in unfunny roles, Eddie Murphy sleepwalks through most of the movie compared to the energy he can deliver, and most of the jokes are either too lowbrow to be trying or else references to pop culture, as if that's supposed to be funny in itself. There are ways of pulling off both kinds of jokes, but Pluto Nash failed to do so. I will say the soundtrack was surprisingly good, but paired with this movie, it came off as melodramatic. But let's set all of that aside and refocus on the plot and the setting. Pluto Nash, in terms of its plot, is a classic mid-century crime film. Strip out all the science fiction, and you've got a club owner in Reno, just before gambling goes legal throughout Nevada. The owner is a former bootlegger. The robots are either Chinese or black. The safe house is in the middle of the Nevada desert, and the big reveal is that the mob boss is the protagonist's twin brother. Sure, you'd lose out on the cloning angle, but that little plot cul-de-sac didn't go anywhere and could easily be removed by just changing some of Rex Crater's exposition. The wasted opportunities go even further than just the plot. All the guns look like normal guns, except some are painted red or blue and they make pew-pew noises. The cars are still cars, even though they float and drive themselves. Dance clubs look just the same, and casinos on the moon still employ Italian crooners who sing "Fly Me to the Moon." It feels like the future setting of Pluto Nash only exists to make unfunny jokes and to get away with cheap sets. Let me give you a couple of counterexamples so you can understand what I'm getting at. There are two movies that I kept thinking about while I was watching Pluto Nash. Total Recall, and The Fifth Element. Total Recall is about a guy who wants to have a high-octane spy vacation on Mars, except that he finds out that he really is a spy, and he proceeds to have a high-octane adventure on Mars. Except, maybe he's not. Maybe he's stuck in the simulation chair, having a seizure. Or maybe the simulation is working as intended, and the moment the movie ends, the main character will wake up, and the operator will congratulate him and show him the door. Total Recall is pure Schwarzenegger action, but it also takes some time to make the audience question things like identity, the nature of memories, and the nature of reality. It's usually not something you can do without straying into science fiction, especially if you want an action-adventure romp at the same time. For its part, The Fifth Element makes full use of its setting. You've got aliens visiting Earth in ancient times. You've got a character who's a living plot device, and the subject of a prophecy. You've got flying car chases that use all 3 dimensions. And you've got guns that shoot a lot more than just zappy bullets. The setting of The Fifth Element influences the plot and the characters. It's not just a thin veneer over a plot that could have happened in 1953. So here's my recommendation. Don't watch Pluto Nash, watch Total Recall, watch The Fifth Element, and enjoy yourself. Thanks for joining me again for today's film review, and I hope I'll see you next time for another take on a Confederate victory.